You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
All right, welcome in Broncos Country, as it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I'm your host, Carl Dumler, and with me today, as always, is Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty well. Just got back from dinner with the wife and her aunt, uncle, and grandma and cousin. Enjoyed it. Had a good burger and some pretzel bites with cheese. So some classic, German Midwest cuisine there. And ready to talk some football now. Man, we're blessed getting to talk about some actual Broncos news in the offseason. Now, they did it last year before free agency opened up with Joe Flacco, and now we got another one with how do you pronounce his name, Carl? I'm going to put this on. I put down the pronunciation on our sheet.
Bouye.
All right. Bouye.
Bouye.
Oh, I saw the Broncos.
A little French.
Yeah.
French going on here. So, that's the exciting news. I mean, I know the other guys are a little jealous that we get this episode to talk about this. And so, no, it is. It's exciting times. Broncos just showing that aggressiveness that Elway sometimes is known for. So we're going to dig into that here in a little bit. But I want to make sure you can find us on Twitter because, we're going to be talking about this beyond just the show today. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH and Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. Make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating if you can. And also make sure you're heading over to milehighhuddle.com. We're going to have lots of information on this beyond what we're going to talk about here in the podcast. So make sure you head on over there. It's part of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. And also know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, well, let's dig into this, man. I've been trying to catch up on the questions here. Everybody's a little excited here, man. So very, very excited to see this. But no, this is the talk of the town. A.J. Bouye coming into the Broncos for a fourth-round pick, the late fourth-round pick, for anybody that's kind of wondering. So it's essentially Broncos traded Emmanuel Sanders for 8 games and a fifth-round pick for a third-round pick and A.J. Bouye. I'll take that deal.
You do have to pay him.
You do. And you're right. And we're going to get into that because that's a lot of the questions so far that I'm seeing have been really dealing with just contracts and what this means for the Broncos at the rest of the cornerback position. Are they going to add anybody else? Does this mean Byron Jones is out of the picture? Chris Harris Jr., is he out of the picture? Maybe after some of his comments today, maybe. Some of those got a little emotional. And sometimes when it comes to the offseason, players need to learn. Sometimes you got to take emotion out of this. I know that's tough because this is their livelihood. And it'd be hard not to, but
they'll be the first to tell you it's business.
Yeah, they will. But you know that emotion plays into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so let's just start. Let's just look at A.J. Bouye by himself, not to the trade, not to the contract. What are the Broncos getting with adding this kind of player?
Well, they are getting a 28-year-old boundary corner, which is something this team needed last year. Chris Harris Jr., he did play boundary a good amount, but he'll tell you himself that his best work was in the slot. So now you got A.J. Bouye, a guy, he's still got 2-3 years left of prime football, and he's cost controlled for the 2 next seasons. So he was going to be a cap casualty anyway. Broncos guaranteed they're getting him now with that extra capital they have. And the Broncos at worst have a high-end number 2 cornerback. But if you compare him with another solid boundary cornerback to go with Bryce Callahan as well, that's the makings of a pretty darn solid cornerback group there. So feel pretty good about it. And he did have a down year last season, but that whole Jaguars team was, talk about turmoil and toxicity. It was bad all around. Yeah. So I think it's a guy that they bought low on a guy that has pretty big upside, and the ramifications it's just very low bust potential. If he doesn't work out, you're out yourself a 4th-round pick, and there's no guaranteed money on that contract. It's really a great deal for the Broncos, and hats off to Elway for pulling this one off and also setting themselves up where they could go out and do something like this. You had all these extra picks, 3rd round, 4th round. When you can do that, then you can go out and get a player like this. And I think in the end, after we see this cornerback market, we're going to be pretty excited about it.
Right. I mean, it seems like the price of Byron Jones goes up every week by another $1 million.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 17.5, 18 million.
Yeah. Right.
Like insane. He's going to reset the market.
Right. And so that's something to keep in mind, that the Broncos really, for the price, it's not that bad for what some of these other guys are going to get. And also, this means if Chris Harris Jr. leaves, Broncos could be getting a 3rd or 4th round comp pick back. So really the deal could end up being just you get Bouye for nothing. Draft value wise, you're just getting the pick later on because it would have been a late 4th round pick anyway. So there's just a lot that plays into this whole picture of how this is, in my opinion, a really great move by the Broncos. And it's understandable also for why the Jaguars are doing this. They're hitting the reset button. Again. Yeah. This is, every few years, this is what you can expect from the Jaguars. They go out and pay big money one year, and then a couple years later, they're cutting those players. So we've got a couple of questions here I wanted to get to before they disappear on us. We want to thank you, Mr. Boggins. I
Bilbo.
like that name. Bilbo, yeah. But really appreciate your donation here. And we have one expensive secondary, but when you play 6 defensive backs, I guess it's necessary. Who's your next free agent pickup prediction? Hashtag whammy.
Whammy. I like it. That's a little anchor man.
Yeah, I'll take it. But and this is kind of geared towards what Fangio had said, that the Broncos are going to play a lot more 6 defensive back sets this year. And so it makes sense to invest in your secondary. You're going to need quality players if you're going to be playing that many on the field. And so it's going to be an expensive unit. I know I saw earlier a lot of people talking about how the Broncos should still go get Byron Jones. And I was figuring it up in my head. If you pay Byron Jones that $17 million, you're paying Bouye the $13 million. You're going to have Justin Simmons maybe at $15 million. And then you got Kareem Jackson at another $14 million, I think this year, $13 million.
Something like that. And then, of course, Callahan at his $7-8 million. You're looking at a secondary that's like $67-68 million of your Probably
cap.
Not happening.
Yeah.
Probably not happening.
So that would not be my guy. I think if Joe Schobert hits the market, I think he could be one that they get pretty aggressive at trying to get, just getting that coverage linebacker that can take care of the middle of the field. If you're adding, it's not only the 6 defensive backs, but I think it's the other guys that can add to that of adding a coverage linebacker. So it wouldn't surprise me if he would be that would be my prediction of first day of free agency being the guy that they go get, because I think they're going to go defensive line, more that second tier kind of guys. Maybe some of the older guys that like Calais Campbell when he gets cut. And try to add players like that to the defensive line. But of a first tier kind of guy, I think Joe Schobert might be that guy.
Well, I'm going to cheat the system here. I think the guy is going to be Prince Amukamara. And I know we were just talking about how much you're paying for those cornerbacks, but you could have paid 1 Byron Jones or 2, which being A.J. Bouye and Prince Amukamara. And you don't even have to wait till the opening of free agency. Once the Bears cut him, it's open game. So I'm just going to go with there's a lot of smoke still surrounding the Broncos with Prince Amukamara, and the Darius Slay / Byron Jones market, that window is likely closed for the Broncos, but I still think Prince ends up in Denver. So then you have a starting trio of cornerbacks of Prince Amukamara, A.J. Bouye, and Bryce Callahan with Isaac Yiadom and maybe Bosby or a rookie on top of Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson. So who's the next free agent pickup? A guy that they can sign before free agency even technically opens in Prince Amukamara.
Yeah, you did cheat a little bit. I was going March 18th. This is what's happening. First guy that they sign when they can actually sign somebody. Midnight signing kind of thing. All right, we got one from Paul, our good old friend Paul. Appreciate it, man. Always, it's a great pleasure talking with you. But any other trades you see coming? I don't.
Probably not. But the Jags are having a fire sale right now. If they want to, get the other 4th round pick for the Broncos and maybe toss in $3 million to offset the Calais Campbell $15 million cap hit, I might be interested. Also, They're shopping Norwell and Linder, their highly paid guard and center. So, probably not happening. But, never say never again. The Broncos got this dearth of picks round 3 and before round 4, as well as 3 projected comp picks coming in. If there's a price that makes sense for you with the amount of cap space the Broncos have, some teams that are in bigger cap trouble, you have the flexibility to do that and get better. So it's something that we've seen the Patriots do it for years now. We've seen the Eagles recently do it as well, where you kind of get a girth of 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks. And then you can trade one of those picks for a veteran that makes a lot of sense for you that many teams couldn't take on. And then you can even play the compensatory game and get better returns. I mean, the example that comes to my head is Patriots traded a 5th round pick for Michael Bennett and a 7th round pick and let Trey Flowers walk. Well, then they ended up trading Bennett because he was an issue in New England. Go figure. But now they're going to get a 3rd round comp pick for Trey Flowers. So they brought in a guy for less. They're going to get more than what they gave up. And it's playing chess when other teams are playing checkers. And I'm not sure how it'll hold up with the new CBA, but this is something that we've seen the Patriots do. We've seen the Eagles do it. And those comp picks, man, those are valuable. That's just adding lottery picks. And it's also making it so you can do this again later on.
Right.
So I really see it. I mean, some people will be disappointed because Bouye did have a down year last year in comparison to other seasons, and he doesn't have the brand power that a Darius Slay or a Byron Jones have, but you're guaranteeing him. And by all indication, this cornerback market this season, especially this new CBA coming up, if it does kick off the extra $30 million that they might be projecting, this market could be absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So 13.5 might be a value by the time free agency closes, which is insane.
Right.
But I mean, guys are worth what people are willing to pay them, I guess.
Right. No, that's exactly it. And so right now, I think this was a great move. And like I said, if there's another opportunity to go do something like this, we've talked about it on this show many times, that if the Broncos really feel like they're contenders, they need to be willing to trade draft picks. Because as much as anybody that's listened to the show once knows how much we love the draft. If you let us during the season talk about it every single week, we would. But at the same time, draft picks get a little bit overvalued. Especially, I mean, we just had a PFF guy on here talking about this very thing of how really from the 4th round on, it is a complete crapshoot when it comes to the draft. And so the idea that you could ever get the same value as that of a true known commodity in the NFL of a player of what they bring to the table, like a Bouye, we know that he can be a top flight cornerback in this league. 2017, he was an all-pro cornerback. That was just a couple years ago. And he's still only 28. So it's not like all of a sudden he just hit that 30 mark and just fell off a cliff. You're going, okay, that makes sense.
And it's not injury related either. He's been relatively healthy.
Right. And so then you start looking at the team around him and the organization and just the chaos that's been going on. And so these kind of moves make a lot of sense. And I would definitely keep looking for these kind of opportunities. I know the Broncos right now are talking to quite a few different teams, just trying to figure out, I mean, if they can have their issues figured out, their main top 3, say, issues of defensive line, cornerback, maybe, I still think wide receivers waited till a later time. But if they can get some of those big issues figured out even before free agency started, that gives them a leg up on every other team in the league.
And it also lets them just take the draft as it comes. The draft, and the Fangio said at his press conference that he wished the draft was before free agency, but it's not how it is. So what does that mean? Free agency is not only about stocking yourself up for next year, but giving yourself as few holes as possible going into the draft. So that way you can just take a more organic approach to it. And if, let's say, Derek Brown for some reason falls to the Broncos at 15, you can, awesome. We'll take the amazing talent that shouldn't be there. Instead of like, oh my gosh, we have to take a cornerback here, otherwise our season is sunk. Like if you go in that situation, you've already lost.
Right.
So that's I agree with you 100% with that.
Right. All right, Chase Wellner, we really appreciate you coming in with the donation here.
I love this picture.
I know the picture every time gets me. But Bouye now has better coaching, safeties, and pass rush.
Maybe on the pass rush. I'll agree with you on the safeties.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to remember the Jacksonville was just a couple seasons removed from Saxonville, and they had, Calais Campbell, Yannick Ngakoue. So theoretically, if Bradley Chubb's healthy and the Broncos can figure out some more on the interior defensive line, that's possible. But I think the biggest thing is the scheme. I mean, again, we haven't even hardly talked about it, but Vic Fangio with the Bears in 2017, rumors, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the Bears actually offered a bigger deal than the Jags did on paper. But when it came down to like taxes and stuff, the Jags he'd actually be bringing in more cash. Hashtag talking about taxes on Super Tuesday. But yeah, no, it's this is a guy that Fangio has been chasing for a while, and I guess by that extent, Ed Donatel. So, those guys, we're sitting here talking football, but those guys are smarter than Carl and I, especially when it comes to the defensive backfield. So Bouye, again, I think the floor is very high, because if he doesn't work out, there's zero dead cap, and you're giving up essentially what is a 5th round pick, even the second to last 4th round pick, not including compensatory picks. Right. And then you got yourself a guy who 13.5 is not a crazy value, but compared to the market and bringing him in, maybe you're going to get him if he hit the market, but not at 13.5. I bet you're seeing him get over that. And not only that, but because he would have been cut, teams would have been after him more because of that very compensatory thing, the equation. Guys who are cut typically are valued a little bit higher than guys whose contracts ran out before, because they don't factor into compensatory picks. So again, with Chris Harris walking, if the Broncos don't sign a cornerback to an equitable, or anybody to an equitable contract, they could be getting a 3rd round comp pick back for him. So it's really just, it's playing the long-term value game, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, again, some people might be upset because they'd rather have Darius Slay or Byron Jones. I get it. But this is a trade that's as much about the floor of the team as it is the ceiling.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
I just want to get this comment in here because I think this is why the Broncos can be this way. We got so lucky with Locke from Flippant Booch. The Broncos. Yeah. But it is. It's the Golden Goose that keeps producing for you when you have a rookie quarterback, or a quarterback on a rookie contract. And it's what the Seahawks were able to do when they had Russell Wilson making pennies on the dollar, and were able to bring in all these high-priced guys. We're willing to trade away even first-round picks to go get their guy. The Chiefs this last year. This is why you're allowed to be aggressive and even make some mistakes and still have a really good roster. The Seahawks made lots of mistakes. They got so lucky that they could compound mistakes and have 2 or 3 and still go, oh, doesn't matter. It frustrated me how much they got lucky with that. But that's where the Broncos are too. So I'll take it. But I
also want to come back to that. I want to, I guess, not caution, but at the same hand, you also have the Dallas Cowboys who, floundered 4 seasons and now are going to have to pay Dak Prescott potentially record-breaking money. So this is your window right now. As crazy it is, people talk about the Broncos being 2 years away, but the rookie contract, it could be gone in an instant. So you have a 3-year window right now, assuming Locke can be even just an average quarterback at his contract. You honestly can have a window opening up. Look at what the Bears did with Mitch Trubisky for that one season. It makes no sense, but when you're paying that quarterback so little, the window's open. Right. So go for it. Go for it. I understand the Chiefs are above your head right now, and that's going to be an issue no matter what. But with the rookie quarterback, again, you said the Golden Goose, that's the biggest cheat code to the current CBA. And if you can find a competent quarterback on a rookie contract, you're set.
Yep. All right. Evan McKinley coming in with another donation here. Really appreciate it, man. And all right, we'll get in here. Would it be a reach based on his play in combine to pick either Jefferson or Henderson if Ruggs and all offensive tackle gone? Also, didn't we get a comp pick for Emmanuel Sanders? No, we didn't get it. We just got a regular trade. Yep. Since he was a trade there in the middle of the season, we got that 3rd round pick and the 4th round pick in exchange for Emmanuel Sanders and a 5th round pick was how that trade went down. So getting here to then the what player, I guess it would depend on who else is left here. If Ruggs is gone, all the offensive tackles are gone. Is Judy and Lamb both gone as well? Are the 2 defensive linemen, is Kinlaw and Brown gone as well? I guess that would be a little bit of my question here on some of that. But let's just say I have to pick between Jefferson or Henderson. I'm going Henderson.
I'm going to go Jefferson. Ooh. Henderson I like a lot, but he's allergic to tackling. He has great skills, but he is one of the worst tackling corners in this entire class. And with how much one-on-one, how this defense is about keeping things in front of them, you're going to have one-on-one chances on the boundary where it's just the cornerback and that wide receiver, and then it's daylight. So CJ Henderson, I love the tools. I love the length, the fluidity, and the hips, etc. But he's just soft. he's soft, and I can't have it in this scheme.
Okay. I'm taking the huge upside of being that true shutdown number one cornerback that Henderson brings to the table.
It's DRC. Some business decisions on the outside. He'll see Percy Harvin coming around the edge and just duck.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a Super Bowl 48 PTSD there.
All right. I guess I can understand that.
Also, Jefferson right now is my wide receiver 4. I think the testing that he had at the combine, he was probably the best in the gauntlet drills. He might have as high of a floor as any receiver in this class. And the fact that he played really well in the slot, I mean, his route running, the burst, the naturalness in his hands. I mean, he fits. He doesn't have the speed like Henry Ruggs does. But if you're looking for a guy who can win quickly in this scheme with Shermer and 11 personnel heavy from Z or slot, I think he can do either. So I like Jefferson a lot. I mean, obviously I liked him going into the combine, but the fact that he tested like he did and looked like he did in comparison to some of these other wide receivers, I'm super impressed. So I guess I'm a bigger Jefferson fan than you are, but that was as much about not being a Henderson fan at 15.
All right. We got one from Terry Randall coming in. Really appreciate it, man. And coming up with a picture of Huddle Up. Like it a lot. What do you think about Drew hanging out with Peyton at the Nuggets game on the weekend?
I'm sad they didn't invite me.
I know.
That's what I think.
No, it's great news. I mean, the more these two can build a friendship, there's nobody I would trust more to help Drew maximize his talents than Peyton Manning. I mean, Peyton Manning, it's not only that he was a great player, but he was one of the hardest working players the NFL's ever seen. And so having that kind of guy giving advice to the rookie, I love it. And the fact that they were hanging out, I mean, they're having all these conversations that he's going to him about how to work his offseason when the Broncos coaches can't work with him. This is that perfect time. And then on top of that, it just shows that Drew gets it. He is a young quarterback, and you see a lot of these young guys that are just like, oh, I've done this all on my own. I've gotten here where I'm, the star player. I've always been a star player. I don't need these veterans coming in that are 20 years older than me telling me how to do my job. And, I mean, we saw that with Paxton Lynch. How many times did people try to help that guy? And he just never got it. He just was like, nope, I'm just going to rely on my pure athleticism to do great things. And so to see Drew doing the exact opposite, it bodes well for this guy becoming a successful quarterback here in Denver.
Yeah, and also I think there's, as crazy it is, there's something intangible about Drew Lock in comparison to like Paxton Lynch as well. He just has that it factor. Guys just like when he talks, you can tell that they like him. And I just never got that with Paxton Lynch. So hang out with Peyton Manning. They're different kinds of quarterbacks. Drew Lock will never be Peyton Manning because for my money, Peyton's probably the best quarterback I've ever seen over his career. A little bit young. I do remember John Elway, but I couldn't appreciate the early years of his careers. But again, it can only mean good things. And also the fact that Peyton Manning, who is a busy guy still, is taking the time to, kind of be there for Drew Lock, talk with Drew Lock. I think that says as much as anything else. Peyton doesn't have to do that.
Right.
So I think that's, he doesn't owe the Broncos really anything. I mean, somewhat, yes. But, he came in, and the fact that he's still attached to the organization, he's reaching out and taking the time to work with Drew Lock and talk with Drew Lock, that says a lot to me about what he may think of Drew. So I think it's all good.
I just want to give a quick shout out here to Mark Evanson. Really appreciate all of you guys that are coming in here. I'm sorry, we're trying to get to as many questions as we can. We're long-winded. If you've never been on with us before, sorry about that. So we'll try to get as many as we possibly can in our time because I know there's a lot of information. But really appreciate it, Mark Evanson. And then also here we have Holden Adams coming in with another donation. Really appreciate it. Again, just you guys are the best. And what do you guys think of Antonio Gibson running back to complement Lindsey? If so, which round would you draft him? Thanks for your great work.
4th round, I think he's good. A little bit raw. And there are other good running backs in this class. Maybe that 3rd round pick with the San Francisco 49ers, if you have to have him, which, I mean, I can't speak to him as a person. I haven't got to talk with him one-on-one. So that would kind of maybe be the difference between your 4th round pick and that San Francisco 3rd round pick. But I really do like him, and it's a passing league. Some people kind of lament about the days of the running game, and we saw that with the 49ers running still well, but in the end, analytics, I think you're going to win. And we're going to trending more and more to like positionless football and more of the passing game, and getting a running back who is a kind of a H-back hybrid like Antonio Gibson, who can flex out. I mean, that's gorgeous. That's what you want. So I like him a decent amount, and I'd have no issue. I think probably the Pitt third-round pick is a little too early. I don't have him in my top 100, but if that's a skill set you want, then no issue taking it end of third round, fourth round.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, coming in here with Wesley Meyers. Really appreciate it. Man, this is fun today. I love it. I love that we got some great news with the Broncos. And so, all right, here he comes in with this question. With Drew Lock being the guy, do you see the Broncos drafting a quarterback as high as in the fourth round, or sticking around with veteran Joe Flacco and his big contract? Bronco country in Alaska.
Hey, shout out to Eric Trickle.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Carl. You can take this one. I just want to win it on the last one.
I do think I don't think they're going to stick around with Joe Flacco. I think that's a done deal. I think he's gone.
The only reason he's still here is because of injury.
Right.
So
they're just trying to work through that and just trying to see if maybe somebody would be willing to trade for him. Just get a 6th, 7th round pick, whatever. But beyond that, they'll cut him eventually. I do think if I'm the Broncos, and I do think that they're kind of leaning this way of going the veteran direction. You usually don't like to have your quarterback room be so young where everybody is in their 2nd or 3rd year of being in the league. So I do think that there's a good chance, like a guy like Chase Daniels is the name that keeps coming up, just because he makes so much sense. He's athletic. He can move around. He's been in the league for a long time. He's won some starts. He's not a great quarterback, obviously, otherwise he'd be starting, but he's a decent veteran to have in your room. And so for me, I think that's the way the Broncos can go. And it's also just throwing in another draft pick. It's kind of like, why don't you just go with the guys you already have in the room at this point? I mean, I don't mind them throwing a late round pick at a quarterback as well as going to veteran as well. But because it's a position you can add a lot of great value, and you can trade those for other great pieces if they start showing anything in preseason. But right now, I do think they'll go a veteran.
Yeah, I kind of have the Patriots mindset when it comes to quarterbacks, where if there's a guy you like, even probably round 3, people would be really upset with that. But if there's a guy you like, I don't have an issue with you taking them just because they are such a highly valued asset. But probably in the end, you look for a guy, maybe, late round 3. There's Jacob Knipp from Northern Colorado, who's got a lot of arm talent. And, you called out Chase Daniel. I just got to call out my guy because I have just a weird love for him. But Josh McCown, that's my dude. I love Josh McCown. He's a great guy, good quarterback. I mean, that white lightning out there. He was a heck of a basketball player too. And he's really found a kind of a cool niche as that coach / quarterback, that guy who's always in the quarterback's ear. So he's been a great quarterback for a while, or not a great, but a great kind of backup quarterback, underrated, and a good athlete as well. So I just I'm biased. I love Josh McCown, the dude. So if they bring in Josh McCown, I might even get the jersey. Heck, I don't know. But I think Chase Daniel is a name that makes the most sense out of ones that you can look into. And, some people will say, I've heard Zach Kelberman talk on here a few times where he said, why not just roll with Brandon Allen or Brett Rippon? And I hear that, but also, I mean, what happens if Drew Lock is out, 2-3 games? You just might as well give up those games. Honestly, that's how – I'm sorry. If there's some Brandon Allen truthers out there, I saw enough. I don't ever need to see him play a game for the Broncos again unless it's third string preseason. So, I mean, ask the Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman. He constantly values that backup quarterback because there are chances. I mean, last year we saw an incredible amount of games where backup quarterbacks had to come in. I mean, the Chiefs with Matt Moore, if they don't get that number 2 seed, let's say they end up with the number 3 seed, do they win the Super Bowl? You think they're doing that with a walk-on kind of quarterback? I don't know. So I think it's something where you like to think in a perfect world, you're never going to need to see the backup quarterback. Why would you need to put assets into it? But I think it's something that with the Broncos having space and a young quarterback, it's more prudent to consider than one would think on surface.
Right. All right. The Fredzilla coming in.
If that is you, Fred, we need to talk about some weightlifting stuff because my goodness.
I'm thinking too.
We found the next defensive lineman.
Yep. All right. He says, if Elway lets Harris walk, there better be some all-pro play from others. Yadam is a liability, and Bosby might not be retained. Well,
how many all-pro corners did the Chiefs have?
0.
How many all-pro corners from this season did the 49ers have? They had a Hall of Famer, but nobody all-pro level.
Right.
Point is, you can't have a roster of all-pros. So you're going to have some borderline Jags, even on a Super Bowl team. So Harris, I think this move he's gone. I mean, that's probably the reality of it. But you Harris have to find an all-pro.
And Harris is not an all-pro. Not anymore.
No. He's really good. He's a top 20 level cornerback, top 15 if you're looking for a slot specifically. But he's going to get paid. I think 15 to 16 million a year is possible.
Right. And that's it. I think Bouye has a chance to actually be a better player than Harris this last year.
Yeah.
And so
better in the boundary.
And so while I love Harris, I absolutely loved what he's done for the Broncos. He's been one of the just true Ring of Fame players of our time. And I'm going to miss him when he's gone. But right now it is getting to that point where he is on the downhill part of his career, and he's going to demand quite a bit of money. Like you said, maybe that 15, 16 million area, depending on how much the cap really changes with some of the CBA stuff. And so getting a guy that's at 13.5 million that might actually play better and be a better fit in this system, because if you do look at cornerbacks that Fangio has liked, he's liked a lot of taller guys that can really kind of make space disappear because of just their size alone. And Harris, he's a try hard guy, and he's a great player. He's smart,
great technician. Yeah,
right.
Ring of Famer, first ballot Ring of Famer, one of my all time favorites.
Right,
Father Time, man, and just the economics of it. It's business, it stinks, but some people would still like Tim Tebow on this team. It's just like got to take the heart out at some point.
Right. So, all right. Justin Statler coming in with another donation. Really appreciate it, guys. Again, we're trying to get to as many as we can. But all right, he says, love that Manning seems to associate himself with the Broncos organization despite being an Indy much longer. It speaks highly of the culture. I think it also kind of speaks to the fact that I think he does feel a little burned by the Colts.
Their ownership is renowned to be not some of the best.
Yeah.
But
yes, it is a great sign that he wants to hang out in Denver, that he wants his family to stay here in Denver, raise his kids in this community. There's a lot of great things that it shows for the Broncos organization, and the fact that he wants to help them out. I mean, that's it all bodes well for the Broncos when they can have him be a part of this organization. It keeps eyes on the organization as well. It makes free agents maybe talk to Manning or anything like that and say, hey, what about this organization? If he has great things to say, it makes that much easier to get a player like that signed.
Yeah. So, it can only be a good thing for the Broncos. However, I guess maybe just to be a little bit of, daytime radio, a little bit back and forth, that presence of Manning in the locker room has almost sometimes been a little bit of an issue because it's had, this is how things used to be. This is how things were done during the Manning era. Well, Manning era has been over now. What will this be, the 5th season since he's been retired? Something like, I think so. Yeah. So, definitely good to have him here, the leadership, the prestige that he brings. And, if he can touch a guy and work with a guy like Drew Lock, get some footwork, get him, progress a little bit, that's all gravy. But, there's a little bit to be said about the changing of the guard in the locker room and leadership in there. So.
All right. Let me find a question here. I wanted to get to this just from Drake L. All our corners trash, but AJ and Bryce. This is why the Broncos are not done at the position. You're right. The other guys have not proven anything. Yadam has been more down than
special
up.
Teamers. The Kayvon Webster kind of role where when he's out there playing, youch. But on special teams, you like the physicality. He brings something as a 3rd round compensatory pick, but a starter he has not been. And the scheme change, I think, hurt him last year to start off.
All right. Nathan Armstrong coming in with, do you think it would be worth trading up between 6 to 8, trying to get one of the top offensive tackles to either replace James, since he will only play probably 3 to 4 games max, I laugh because I don't want to cry. Or replacing Bowles. So this is a pretty big question. I think of the Broncos have the draft capital to trade up, but I also think that they have enough holes on the team to not trade up.
Yeah,
I know we talked about trading draft picks and how sometimes this is a good thing, but when you're compounding draft picks, like this is a fourth round pick for a player, so it's still 1-to-1. Where if you're trading up to that kind of place, you're looking at probably having to give up a first round pick next year, probably a couple of your mid round picks this year, and all for a player that honestly, right now, I'm not sure that they're going to come in and be better than James or Bowles. That's just the reality of an offensive tackle coming in. When they are rookies, they stink. Even if they become top offensive tackles in football, they struggle the year one. So maybe you play him at guard to start off with. I mean, we've talked about that before with Wills or your boy from Iowa. And so it just kind of – I just can't see giving up that much draft capital to get there. When right now I do think the Broncos, with how much they're going to be able to spend in free agency, can sit there at 15 and wait for their guy. Or they could even trade back like they did last year and get more draft capital, get more where they can move in 2021 as well, kind of what they're being able to do now of trade those picks for something better as well. I just can't really see moving up unless it's maybe one of the third round picks to move up to like 11 to get ahead of the Raiders kind of thing. That's about as far as I see them going.
It would depend. I mean, obviously at some point you're going to start calling just to test the market because, some years it costs an arm and a leg to move up because other teams are trying to move up for a quarterback. And then there are other years where, hey, actually all we want is your third round pick and a second round pick next year. So I think if a guy that you love, let's say you absolutely love Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, and Jedrick Wills, and they are all, or at least one of them is on the board at, let's say 9, and you've already made a deal with the Jags even, I'm calling just because the offensive tackle, I think there is a drop-off. I don't put Andrew Thomas on that same tier as those three, but I think you'll roll him into those four for this conversation. And definitely tackles are going to come off the board at 10 and 11 with the Browns and the Jets. I'd be shocked if they didn't. So I'd at least call, but probably in the end, I'm going to stand pat at 15. Now, if there's somebody like Jeffrey Okudah, even after the Bouye trade, or Isaiah Simmons, who are my number 2 and number 3 player, who I think they have a chance to be the best players at their position in the league, maybe I'm a little bit more inclined to do that. But typically trading up, the only time it makes sense to do from a capital perspective is if you're trading up for a quarterback. So I'd call. I'd see what they want. Maybe I'm inclined to do it, but probably not in the end. It's probably just going to cost too much, especially if it costs a future first-round pick.
Oh, man. That's the picture of the day right there.
How'd you get a picture of me? A fat chipmunk eating a piece of pizza. Or a gerbil, excuse me.
There you go. Big lineman, really appreciate it. This trade was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Trading E-Man for a third and Bouye was a pretty sweet deal. F5ing's social media has begun.
I don't understand the F5ing thing, but
I was going to ask you. I was hoping, yeah.
That must be a Gen Z thing. I'm a millennial. So, this is a great trade. I mean, I think, is this going to be the trade that puts the Broncos over the top? No, but it's a start towards the right direction. So, I mean, it just makes cornerback that much less of a dire need. Still would like them to get another guy. And unfortunately, I think with the contract and the Broncos, while they do have cap space, it's not, infinite. So they're not going to get a Byron Jones. I don't think they're going to trade for Darius Slay now. But again, Prince Amukamara, maybe a Breeland Speaks, a Kendall Fuller. There's some other options out there, and I do not think the Broncos are done at cornerback just yet. So We'll be see. I think Callahan, they were going to play him on outside last year, but that was because they liked Chris Harris Jr. in slot so much. I think there was probably going to be a little bit of a rotation there. So really they could go either way. I think Callahan, you could see him go either way and be fine with it. But either way, I don't think they're done.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
F5 is a refresh. Okay, F5 refreshes. Thank you, Justin Statler. See, I just hit the refresh button. We're here in Iowa. We do things a little bit more simple.
There you go.
Fancy F5 talk over.
No, I'm with you. This was honestly, looking at it, I mean, having a little bit of time now, a few hours to really digress or digest everything that's gone on with this trade, I think this is one of the better moves Elway's made. Just because, not that I think that all of a sudden he's going to become an all-pro cornerback or anything like that, but more just the value that he could possibly be getting if Chris Harris walks. Like you said, he could maybe get a third-round pick back, and so you're
crazy.
Right. You're getting better draft capital back on top of possibly a cornerback that could be playing better than Chris Harris this year.
That's 3 years younger.
Right. And somebody that Fangio has absolutely adored for a long time. So I really do. I think this is one of those trades that really works well for the Broncos. And I think we look back at this and go, man, Elway, you the man kind of thing. So
if you're looking at a depth chart, like Broncos needs, cornerback went from let's say it was like green, yellow. Let's stop lighting. Green is great. Yellow is concerning. Red is like mother of God. We need help now. Broncos went from a red to a yellow with this trade, where it's something, first round pick, still on the table. Paying another guy, still on the table, but you're not like losing sleep at night because your cornerbacks are so absolutely inept. So
right.
It just raises the floor again. So I'm excited about the Bouye trade, and it's about, talk about a win. This is what it gets this is long-term gains. Broncos trading back last year, trading Emmanuel Sanders, a guy who didn't want to be here anymore in a season that was going off the rails. Because you do stuff like that where you're thinking about not just the week that you're in or the season you're in, but the next season down, the next 2 seasons down, you can make moves like this when the window opens. And it's just, again, this is stuff we've been preaching about on here for 2 or 3 seasons. And I think I was at least a little bit harder on Elway than maybe I should have been, just because I thought that they were giving a little bit of fan speak when they were actually doing a soft rebuild. Like, just admit it. Just call it what it is. Don't lie to us. Mm-hmm. The fans would understand it if you're like saying, we're going to compete this year when you're not, obviously don't have the infrastructure in place.
Right.
But it's a good move. It's a great start to the offseason. And hopefully, gosh, I'm honestly such a fan that I'm hoping that it doesn't fall through by March 18th. Somebody's like, oh, the Broncos are getting him for that? We'll give you 1 pick earlier.
Right. All right, I wanted to get to this one because I think this is a great point here. From Timothy Hawkinson, O-line, one word, Munchak. Alex Gibbs in the Super Bowls in the 90s never had a first-round pick, but was the best O-line with Davis. And the big reason I wanted to bring this one up is just this is where, like our question earlier about trading up for an offensive tackle. Not that I'm against taking an offensive tackle in the first. I just think that because of the coaching staff that you have, and you have one of the top position coaches in all of football for the offensive line, it does allow the team to wait a little bit longer than maybe some other teams would to find talent. And again, I just don't think a rookie's going to come in and dominate at the level that you would hope they would do. I think that they're going to have their struggles, and I would worry kind of like with Garrett Bowles, where he struggles more at home than he does on the road. And I think it is because he has that nervous feeling of, I know the home crowd is actually kind of against me. And for a first round pick, that's just, you're coming into a pretty difficult situation. And so having a guy that can maybe develop for a year, and I know that means Garrett Bowles is going to have to start for another year. And I know that's tough for a lot of people to accept. It's not going to be great. And you said it earlier, you can't have all pros at every position. No team does. The Chiefs didn't this last year. They had their struggles all throughout their roster. Their offensive line was not great if we're really looking at it. Right, yeah. Mitchell Schwartz was a great player, but beyond him, they had a bunch of Jags. And so just things to kind of keep in mind that as the Broncos are going through this process of maybe hoping that their coaching staff can really work with some of those mid-round guys and turn them into something much better.
I do want to bring just a historical nerd point to that last comment about the Alex Gibbs offensive line in the 90s. Broncos were one of the very few teams playing that zone system at the time. So guys who in today's league where, you see a mix of gap and zone heavy, the Broncos could take guys in the 6th, 7th round just because no other teams are running that type of blocking scheme really. That would go, round 2, round 3 today to a more zone specific team. So games changed a little bit, leagues changed a little bit. There's not like, it's not just one team running this novel type of concept in the run game where a lot of good players don't fit other teams' schemes, so the Broncos can load up on talent elsewhere. So it's not a 1-for-1 comparison, but again, your point stands. They do have Munchak. The Broncos aren't going to be screwed if they don't use a first-round pick on the offensive line. They're not going to be screwed if they don't use a top 50 pick on the offensive line. I mean, heck, even talking with Timo Riske from Pro Football Focus this last week, it typically takes 2, 3, 4 years before that offensive lineman even shows who they're going to be. So the Broncos take a first-round pick this year in the offensive line. Yes, it does raise the floor of that offensive line, but it's no guarantee that the offensive line is going to be fixed. So you just got to – and the Broncos have other needs also. Defensive line, cornerback still, wide receiver. Yep. You just got to take it as it comes.
Right. All right. Chandler Mertz coming in with, if you had options between Judy and Ruggs or Lamb and Ruggs at 15, who would you choose? Don't make me choose.
Judy and Ruggs or Lamb and Ruggs? So you get Ruggs with one of these guys? Is that my understanding, or is he asking?
I think maybe Ruggs just got put twice.
Okay.
So I think just between Judy and Lamb.
Ruggs the third.
Yeah. Judy, Ruggs, or Lamb, who you taking at 15?
Oh, man. What's nice about picking 15 is you might not have that choice. The choice might be made for you.
Right.
So it's kind of like in Pokemon, where you have you pick your first Pokemon. Let's say you take Squirtle, and then Gary, that jerk, automatically takes the grass one, Bulbasaur. So you kind of can have it decided before you even get to 15. But honestly, I have them all ranked side by side with each other. Carl, I think I might be leaning Ruggs more and more by the day. I just think his skill set that speed is a differentiator. He's not John Ross. If you say he's just a speed receiver, you're telling on yourself that you don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry. But his skill set, I think it offers the most upside. And while he didn't just run faster than everybody, he ran significantly faster than everybody, and he's only played football since his junior year. Honestly, you can't go wrong with any of them. It's like debating ice cream flavors. Some people like sherbet, some people like Pokemon references. Oh my gosh, now I'm hitting the computer. But getting real excited over here. But I was about to dab on you. I guess that'll teach me. But honestly, I'm leaning Ruggs right now, but I would have no issue with any of them.
I'm sticking to my board. Jerry Judy.
I thought your board was Lamb.
No. Remember, I told you.
No, I told you
it changed. I have to go Judy. I just think he is such a perfect fit for this system. He could be a little bit more high quantity player. I know that was one of the arguments against Ruggs was he's only getting 3.3 touches a game. Well, he's scoring every fourth touch.
If they're going for 60 yards and a touchdown every third catch, then who cares?
Yeah.
Unless you're playing PPR, which then I understand. That's one of the big things that's, I think, the dichotomy that you're seeing right now between football analysts and fantasy football analysts, where Ruggs, you're not going to get him peppered with targets like that Michael Thomas kind of guy. But if he's getting, 4 targets and even if one of them just busts, that's a game-changing play. So, again, I think it's just it's a different conversation. It's why you're seeing them evaluated differently.
Right. I just think I like Judy because, one, day one impact. I mean, he's the most NFL-ready wide receiver in this draft. 2, like I said, just the fit in the system of his ability to win in the short, win in quick, win those one-on-one battles that Shermer requires you to be able to do. And he can still take the top off of defense. Yes, not like Ruggs, but he can still get down the field if you need him to.
The thing I like about all 3 of them is all 3 are great yak guys.
Yep.
And all 3 yak differently. Judy, despite what his short shuttle says, which, I mean, gosh, who cares? It's one of the worst short shuttles ever. Watch the tape. But, he can Houdini guys. I literally can, when I watch his highlights, I can hear Chris Berman in the background going, whoop, whoop, like just making guys look silly. And then you got CeeDee Lamb, who also kind of has that, but it's more of a physical brand where he kind of is more of a running back with the ball in his hands. And then you have Henry Ruggs, who just kills angles. I mean, he'll run past you. It doesn't matter. And he has good field vision as well. So not to the extent that Lamb does, but still, I think all of them are yak weapons. All of them really complement Sutton well in different ways. And any of them would be a treat for this offense. And gosh, Drew Lock would be lucky to have them. And all of them help the offensive line as well, which I wish more people understood that. But
yeah, and that's it. I would be happy if any of them were taken by the Broncos. I mean, I have them all pretty much like right in a row on my big board. And so I have Judy at the top, but it really is pretty 1A, 1B, 1C when it comes to wide receiver, because you could see how you could use all 3 of them. Each of them are going to bring, like you said, a little bit different skill set to the team, but they all bring a great skill set to the team. So I couldn't argue with any of them.
And they're all just slightly different. Well, I guess not all of them slightly different, but they're all different enough from Sutton where you're not just totally overlapping the skill set. So I'd be happy with any of them.
Summoned Fox 88. CJ Henderson falls to the second. After his combine, that's a no.
He's going to go to a team that loves to just leave their cornerbacks on an island and man and cross their fingers that he doesn't have to tackle. Which there are schemes like that. I don't think that's the Fangio scheme. Personally.
Yeah.
I would take Christian Fulton, who's also not the best tackler, but I see more of it than I do from CJ Henderson. And Fulton played this last season with an injured shoulder. And then Jeff Gladney, I'd take over him as well.
All right. Buona Beast coming in with thought on Claypool and his combine.
Reminds me of Darren Waller. Darren Waller was a wide receiver coming out of Georgia Tech, which for being a team that runs the triple option for how many good wide receivers they've had makes zero sense. But anyway, Claypool, what is he, 6'4", 240 pounds? That's a tight end. That's a move tight end. I mean, maybe you want to call it a big slot. I mean, we're seeing that in the NFL as well. Like Alan Lazard, he was 6'4", 240 pounds. Didn't run like a good wide receiver, ran like a great tight end. Do you want the big guy who is not separating from defensive backs against cornerbacks, or do you want him lined up against linebackers and safeties? I think I'd rather have the explosive guy against slower guys to create big plays. So in the end, I think I would move him to tight end. I think he's got big upside, but also I think his combine doesn't exactly match the tape, which is something that was also the case with combine standout from last season, also Notre Dame player, Miles Boykin. So I'm definitely interested in the tools. I don't know how much it translates year one. I'll have to go back to the tape. I'm not an Ian Book fan, so I'd curse you for making me have to go back to this Buona Beast, because Ian Book was frustrating to watch with that noodle arm. But he's an interesting player. I wouldn't be surprised if he sneaks into the top 100.
Yeah. All right, we're going to get a few more questions in here before we get out of here, so make sure you're getting in your questions. We'll try to get as many as we can. Bill, 1293, most likely linebacker Denver can get in free agency, or Schobert, Littleton.
Gesundheit. Mike Wazowski.
That guy.
Kwiatkowski. I know he went to West Virginia, and he was a Bears player, but gosh darn it, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce the Polish name. I went to school with a bunch of Polish kids. I should be able to do this, but I'll eat the pierogies, but don't make me say Kwiatkowski. So I think that now that you saw the Broncos bring in A.J. Bouye, that the odds of a Schobert or a Littleton moved up, honestly, because they have more cap flexibility now. Now, I'm a Todd Davis fan for what he brings to the table, and Alexander Johnson, I was probably one of the first saying this guy could be something last year. Write an article about him after the Pro Bowl, or not the Pro Bowl, the Hall of Fame game. But the Broncos need some speed. They need some coverage from that linebacker position. We see that. I mean, God bless Todd Davis's soul. I think there was an article last year where he was one of 5 linebackers that had over 100 snaps from the nickel alignment. Todd Davis over the slot. Oh my God. But what?
Yeah.
But so I think it's definitely more possibility now than it was before, because the Broncos are saving themselves $4 to $6 million going with a guy like Bouye instead of a Byron Jones or a Bradbury or even a Chris Harris Jr.
Right. All right. Ron W. coming in. Really appreciate the donation here. Would you guys move up for Isaiah Simmons? Simple answer, yes. He is the unicorn. There are maybe about 3 or 4 people in this entire world that are built like that guy. And that's maybe stretching it. Yeah, that guy right there. No. But it's true. I mean, a guy that has cornerback speed, that has safety coverage ability, and has linebacker size. I mean, you're talking about 3 or 4 positions that this guy could cover on the field. And if I'm thinking about Fangio kind of defense, where the thing that makes Fangio so great at defense is quarterbacks just don't know what the defense is going to do in the secondary. They don't know who's coming down playing man. They don't know if they're going to be playing man, then all of a sudden switch to zone at the last second. They don't know.
Quarters, baby.
Right, exactly. And so to get a guy that can come in there and just match up with anybody you want to put him on. You just talked about Todd Davis playing pretty much nickel slot for a lot of snaps. You don't
I
want
love you,
that.
Todd, but that's a bad idea. And that was not a necessity.
But you put Isaiah Simmons in that role, all of a sudden that is a plus for the Broncos. And so, again, that would just be such a huge addition to this defense. It covers up so many of the issues that this defense had last year. And so, yes, he is one of the few players. I mean, they were talking about that trade up to 6 or 8. This might be the one guy I'm saying that's worth the trade up.
Okudah for me as well.
I know Okudah's on that plane for you. And I love Okudah. I do. Especially, I watched his footwork at the combine. And they're like, this is what you do to show other players. Like, this is what you do.
His hips do what so this guy does. Man, he should have been on the Super Bowl halftime show.
Yes.
So I'd rather watch that than Shakira. That's not true. I take it. But yes. I would trade up for Simmons. If he fell to 7, I would be on the lookout for it. If that's high, maybe you have to give up. I would not give up a future first. We don't know enough about Drew Lock yet to be trading future first round capital. But the 2 this year or the future second, if you believe in Isaiah Simmons as that guy, then I have no issue with it. I do want to. I'm firmly on this stance that Isaiah Simmons, he's not a guy that's going to replace Todd Davis or Alexander Johnson for the stack linebacker role. However, with how much sub the Broncos play, that 4-2-5 defense, he's playing nickel. I haven't played nickel, and essentially you can play a 4-3 defense with him as that outside overhang safety / will linebacker, and that is sub and base. He's that versatile. So, and then you can play him at free safety some. You can do him at edge rusher some. It's just he's a freak. He's an absolute monster. And if you have any questions about it, just look how different the game plans were and how different he was utilized from the Ohio State game in the playoffs to the college championship game. Just 2 different players almost. Two different skill sets how they use him. He's super just a matchup neutralizer. Right.
And so Tyler Finner kind of adding to that. Really appreciate your donation as well. And guys, we're getting a couple more questions in here. We'll get out of here. But really appreciate you all sticking with us here for the show. But he says, if the Broncos see Isaiah Simmons slip to 6 to 10 range, I could definitely see Fangio wanting that piece to his defense like he had with Smith in Chicago. And, to me, Simmons is so much more than what Smith. I liked Roquan Smith, but Smith is not Isaiah Simmons.
I think Simmons is more safety than linebacker at this point.
Right.
I say he's more like Derwin James. I think that's my favorite comp I've seen for him. And I stood Derwin James. I was a stan. So you use him like that. I think Pro Football Focus just had an article today where that's his early usage. That's where you want to get him at. So what a unique player. If he's there, let's say the Panthers, a team that might be looking to trade down, a team that might be doing the Miami Dolphins kind of accumulating assets for not only, young players under contract, but future assets, I'd be calling hard at 7 and saying, okay, if he's there, what do you want? That's my guy. So we'll see. If he falls past 4, I don't know where he's going to go, but I'd be 0% shocked if he goes to the Giants because it sounds like the Giants are leading towards offensive tackle or the best defensive player available. And that could be Simmons.
Yep. Nope. I agree with that. Jody Moncrief, why do you guys not want to fix the offensive line?
I can't tell if he's trolling me or not. I recognize this name, so I don't know if he's just giving me a hard time. I do want to fix the offensive line. I just think that the Broncos offensive line is not in as dire straits as many seem to believe. I think they're closer to average than they are an absolute, detriment to the team. And if it makes sense, I do want them to use at least one of their top 100 picks on the offensive line, be he a tackle or an interior offensive lineman. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they go that way. But, it's not the only issue. And as we've seen from these other teams, offensive line value is just, it's as good as the quarterback is. Look at the difference with Joe Flacco to Drew Lock. Different offensive line. So, all right. Well, it looks like Carl just froze out of here. So, folks, I'm going to have a few more questions here. A.J. Bouye trade was the most surprising thing to hear about on my birthday. Happy birthday to X Black Knight 232. Congratulations. Everyone, I see Carl's face is still frozen there, so everyone give him a hard time. Let me see. Sorry I'm late. Miller 707. That's okay. Everything's going well here. A cute picture of your, I believe that's some sort of hound dog there. And here we go. Chris Sanders talking about interior offensive line. Cesar Ruiz has been my number 1 interior offensive lineman for, a few seasons now. And I've been a big fan of his game. He was a number one, I think, center interior offensive line recruit out of the, excuse my wife's closet now that's open since Carl's not here. Let me move that this way now. He's definitely an interesting player. I also like Cushenberry. Matt Hennessy out of Temple is one that is really interesting. And, it's a really good center class. So I wouldn't be concerned at all. And I don't want to highlight, Jody, I see your comment here. You have a curse word. I'm not going to bring that up, but you said the Broncos have a bad LT, no center, and no right guard. I think the Broncos are much happier with the offensive line depth they have than general consensus. I do think that they are going to be bringing in BJ Finney or somebody comparable, but BJ Finney, there's just so much smoke that it makes sense he was with Fangio. He started well. Once the Pouncey was injured, he can play center or guard. Guess what? Those are two Broncos needs, and he's not going to break the bank. And then also, I think they like Pat Morris, Elijah Wilkinson, and Austin Schlottman more than general consensus. So really, I think the offensive line is a need, but it's right up there with cornerback depth, defensive line. I mean, they're losing their two best defensive linemen, so that's right up there. And then, Juwan James is going to be back. Garrett Bowles should be a year better, and it's the first year in his career where he's going to have the same offensive line coach and the same left guard next to him. So really, I think the Broncos offensive line, is it going to be a top 5 unit next year? No, it's not going to be a top 5 unit next year. Can it be a top 15 unit? Yes, it might already even be. I mean, Pro Football Focus had them as the 12th rated offensive line. I think they're probably closer to that 15th to 18th, but you can live with that. I mean, just again, offensive line is as good as the quarterback play. It's as good as the scheme. It's as good as the wide receivers. I think people do not put enough stock into the entire system when it comes to offensive play and defensive play. Great quarterback play can help make up for less than stellar offensive line, less than stellar wide receiver. Great wide receiver play can help make up for less than stellar quarterback play, less than stellar offensive line play. Great offensive lines can cover up green quarterbacks and less than above average offensive weapons. I mean, we saw that with the Cowboys early on when they had that great offensive line. Just give the ball to Zeke while Dak Prescott was still kind of figuring out the ropes. So really, in the end, you got to figure out how you can get the best overall synergistic system, and because they do not perform in a vacuum, they all complement each other, and they all can have effect on each other. So it's really, you got multiple ways you can lean there. I see a lot of great comments coming in here. Juwan James is a backup quarterback. I don't know if he'd want to get hit that much. So we got a couple more here. Oh, and X Black tonight. Happy birthday, everybody. Yep. Make sure you give him the best. So that's great to see. Here's a couple more questions. Thoughts on possibly signing Reader? Cliff said they're interested. Also, offensive line isn't as big of a need as the Boomers think. It is a need. It's just there's needs that are comparable to it. I think that's the biggest thing. You can't have the myopic view that if the Broncos don't attack the offensive line 20 times in the draft, then they're screwed. That's not the case. That's not true. So I think Reader is an interesting one. I am curious to see what the market is going to be. People talk about him as a pure nose tackle, but he has reps at 4 tech and 5 tech, 3, all the way down to 0 and 1. So that movement skills, that versatility is key. However, he's a guy who plays 50% of the snaps. Are you going to be sinking in $11, $12 million into a guy who's playing that many snaps when he's not a top 10 pass rusher from the interior? That just gives me pause. That gives me pause. So I would be interested, but the market is probably going to dictate that as much as anything. So, the Broncos won a Super Bowl on defense, by the way. That's true. I will say, though, I'm going to be just bringing up analytics and data constantly. There is a good amount of data that says that a great defense winning can happen. It does happen, but those great defenses don't give you the best opportunity to win a Super Bowl because they are a flash in the pan. It's just so hard to get, 12, 14 players, all healthy at the same time, all under contract, all making sense with the age range, where you have to have that just single blip of a season to capitalize. And if that doesn't happen, then your window's gone. Let's just look back to a few recent examples. How about talking about A.J. Bouye, the Jacksonville Jaguars 2 seasons ago? Everybody was going nuts about how good that defense was. And it was great. If they would have won the Super Bowl, we'd have been talking about that defense for a long time. But they didn't win it. They fell to the Patriots. Shock, right? That happens to a lot of teams. And then the very next season, they absolutely implode. So that's the nature of great defenses and trying to build a great defense. It's just so hard to get that single season. The best chance to go to the Super Bowl and to win the Super Bowl is to repeatedly knock on the door of the playoffs. And the best way to do that is to have a great head coach and quarterback, obviously, and then have some offensive structure pieces in place. Obviously, you still want the pass rush, blah, 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 but depending on just a great defense, it doesn't seem like the most sustainable model. So, homie needs facial hair. Hey, now, what do you call this? So, all right, well, guys, I think we probably should be getting up on out of here. Carl froze out. So I saw somebody talking about Terrell Burgess. I also really like him. He's been one of my favorites. I was a little bit less than thrilled with his arm length, his wingspan, but that tended to be the case of the entire defensive back class this year. And also talking about another guy in my first mock draft, Keith Ismail from Buwana Beast. Like him a lot. Think he could be a good center. I don't know if he has the strength to play guard in this system at the league. He's a little bit smaller, but I'm interested in him. I like him a lot. But anyway, folks, I see that we still got a good amount of people in here, but if anything over an hour, Chad starts to get on our case. So it's easy to make Chad the bad guy. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. You can also find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH. Everyone, tweet out to him. Make sure he's okay. He's in Kansas. Who knows what the heck happened there when his internet went out. So hopefully, I probably have a text from him right now. But make sure you head going over to Mile High Huddle. Find our stuff on there. I should have a piece coming out tomorrow about what's kind of just the room temperature and what the Broncos' biggest need is at this point going into the free agency period. And there's obviously constantly good stuff. Eric Trickle, Lance Sanderson, Bob Morris, Thomas Hall, Keith Cummings. There's Josh Carney, obviously Chad Jensen. A lot of good writers over at Mile High Huddle, and we really appreciate you guys coming over and reading our stuff. It means a lot. Again, we're powered by Overtime Media, and if you guys have any questions, just reach out to us on Twitter. We really do appreciate it. A.J. Bouye, a Denver Bronco now. Broncos cornerback needs, while it's not completely closed, they're in a much better position today than they were 24 hours ago. So that's exciting. We appreciate you guys coming on here today to talk football with us. And we'll see you again next week. Same time, same place, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. or 6 p.m. Mountain Time here on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. Appreciate you guys and all the best until next week. Have a good one. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.